Okay, well, I'll start then. My name is Chris Denaro, and I am calling this dredging work group public meeting to order at 5:33. I guess we have to do our roll call.
Paul Bohm here.
Julia Kay.
Chris Denaro,
Jeff Quick.
okay, so we're just missing Bruce.
And Keith, we've got Keith.
You're on mute, Keith. We can see you here, but can't hear.
I'm sorry. Yes, I didn't realize I was on mute. Keith Hannon's here.
Okay, so everybody but Bruce. So we decided that we would have public comments first. Do we have any comments? Okay. I don't see anything, so we will move on then. So
Before we go any further, we do need somebody to take minutes.
Oh, so I offered to do that. Sorry, I was on mute when I said
Thanks,
that.
Keith. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the minutes of the meeting went out for September 3rd, and we have some additional amendments that are on there. And do we have any other amendments or any other comments before?
I do have some, so thanks, Keith, for submitting those comments. I do have some additional, so in red are the comments that Keith has made. And in they don't show up very well, but there was a couple. So you had put it was also discussed that a minimum water depth of at least 8 feet in the pond would be a good target for dredge plan to inhibit aquatic invasive plant growth. But what we actually discussed was that 8 feet is the minimum that would accomplish anything possible. So I changed that. Let me see if I can, I don't know why it's not showing up as a little bit differently from what Keith's comments were, but you can see my strikeout. So I changed it to say that it was also discussed that a water depth of 8 feet in the pond would be the minimum for a dredge plan to inhibit aquatic growth, plant growth.
Okay.
Okay. And then I don't believe that, so the topsoil does not need to be kept and stockpiled on site. The dredge material is all organics, you know, some sands, but it's suitable planting material. And the topsoil, as I thought we discussed at the meeting, and I could be wrong, but my understanding for sure is that you don't need the topsoil to go back on that. I thought that the prison or the DOC would take the material and use it for whatever purposes. And Jeff, please chime in.
Yeah, no, we would need to put a minimum of at least 6 inches of topsoil back on that field because
Okay.
they still do use it.
So you would need to put a minimum of 6 inches of topsoil back in order to plant?
Yes, yep.
Okay, that's not my understanding, but we can, that is, and that's what you said. Okay, so then maybe it can just say rejects this deletion. Topsoil needs to be available because it doesn't have to be stockpiled on site. Available as a cap.
So the idea would be if we're going to identify this area for the dredging material, the first thing you would have to do is strip the top and stockpile the topsoil.
Yep.
Now, like I said, all of it doesn't have to go back, but we need a minimum of 6 inches.
Okay.
But in order to increase the depth and the amount of dredging material that you could place there, the subgrade, the gravel base that we saw,
Yep.
could be utilized elsewhere.
Right. And we'll talk about that.
Right.
But you're saying that a minimum of 6 inches.
So Delia, I just have a quick question. So this is stuff we're talking about now, that it's a minimum of 6 inches. I don't know if Jeff said that before, or are we just adding that in now? And those
No,
are,
I'm sorry, that's a good point.
I
Did you
did say that before.
Yeah, I think you said it before.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
You will notice I didn't include everything we said in the minutes
yeah,
verbatim, so.
of course.
The amount of topsoil
And it wouldn't,
needs
this
to be
is
added
more
back.
for planting crops, Jeff, correct?
Yes.
Continue to be cropped?
Why don't we just add minimum topsoil needs to be added for future uses, you know?
Well, I think it doesn't necessarily have to. I think, well, what did you say, Jeff, at the last meeting?
So even if he didn't farm it, you would still need to cap what was placed there.
Okay,
And that's primarily what that topsoil would do. Would
okay,
cap that area. Now, if you did minimum of 6 inches, he could, in essence, refarm that area if he wanted to.
okay. Does this accomplish what we need, what you said at the last
Yeah.
meeting,
It does, to me.
Jeff?
Yep.
Okay. Chris, I don't recall that you expressed interest. Am I wrong?
Yes, you are wrong, because I did express interest.
Okay. I think both Jeff and I missed that because he sent me an invite. I'm sorry. Nothing else.
Okay, any other comments? Okay,
No.
so do I have a motion then to accept the minutes of the September 3rd meeting with the amendments?
I move to accept the minutes with the amendments as discussed and written down.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, so the minutes are accepted as amended.
So I think that, I'm not sure that Keith, I don't think you were there at the last meeting.
Yay.
Yeah, he was.
Which
Hey,
was that the main task force
Oh,
meeting?
okay, I'm sorry, it was the main meeting. Okay, I'm sorry. Never mind, never
Too
mind.
many
I'm sorry.
meetings, Delia.
Yep,
Okay, good.
But just on
Yeah.
the minutes, do you want, are you gonna submit those, Delia, or should I
I will
submit them?
submit
Okay,
those.
okay.
You should do a roll call vote, just because it's on Zoom.
Do roll call.
One, because we did, okay, so who votes to accept the minutes?
So Paul voted, Keith seconded, and if you three just want to,
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
that's it. We're the voting members, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so now into the meeting. I don't have the official agenda, but I have the agenda that I made up.
Good, because I printed out both and.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm gonna just
Oh.
go and grab them off the printer. Excuse me 1 second.
okay.
But please go ahead.
All right, so why don't we start with number one, the volume of the cubic yards that the dredge area can hold. We received an email from Delia today for discussion at tonight's meeting. Basically saying that EA has completed an analysis. And it says that says for the purpose of this analysis, EA assumed that the proposed fill evaluation would not exceed the elevation of either Route 2 or the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Based on these assumptions, the resulting volumetric capacity of the North Field is approximately 49,500 cubic yards. And then there's a bunch of disclaimers that I think that we need to go over because I would like to understand them better. Should I read those or?
Just a quick question. Does the issue of 6 inches of topsoil to add it, was that factored in? Is that,
No, that was not factored in.
so we have to subtract
Right.
6
Right.
inches times some area?
They did say in their assessment, they did factor in, an additional 1.5 feet being removed.
Right. And that is all the topsoil. That's an average of the topsoil. But it was this analysis accounts for just dredge spoil being placed on the fields, and I can pull up that graphic.
I thought it was just mentioned that you could also remove some of the gravel. Is there additional excavation beyond the,
There is a potential for that, yeah.
Right, so Paul, that's a question for you. You know, we understood from one of the last meetings that there's 65,000 or 85,000 yards at Starmets that is looking to come out.
oh, it's more than that.
Contaminated.
It's going to be more than that. Yeah.
Okay. So a significant volume of contaminated material will be removed from Starmets. And is it the intention that a similar volume will be replaced?
Yes.
Okay, so then theoretically, you know, the material that is in that fields and the, you know, test pitting that was done is good material that could be used for fill.
Yeah. And what I think, so Bruce Thompson of DeMaximus is the
Yeah.
program manager. He's the guy to contact. I think a while ago he was approached with the idea of putting dredge material there. And when he looked at the characterization, he said probably it would fail based on, I forget what it was. So,
The fact that it's pond muck.
well, also I think there was a PAH concentration, but anyway, so yeah, it's possible, but I mean, in order for us to put that into a proposal, which would be very interesting,
Mhm.
he should be contacted, and I mean, part of the proposal would be for them to they have to characterize that. They don't have to sample and characterize that material in order for it to be suitable, but it's probably an attractive proposition because I'm not sure that they've identified all the soil that they need. It's in progress right now, so it's not too late, but it's probably pretty timely to get that connection
So,
made.
Paul, I have a question. So the previous hole that was being filled, I think it was like a cooling pool or something like that. I think that's what it was being referred to as.
Cooling basin.
Basin, yeah. But my understanding was the future use of that was going to be just like an open grassy field or something, like a park almost.
Okay,
So
so what's
I just,
so no, so there's a holding basin, which is it's actually filled right now with soil, and they're going to cap that over. What we're talking about here is soil that's being excavated from the larger site,
right.
and that's in progress. So that's about 80 to 100,000 cubic yards of material they have to replace to
Right.
bring it up to grade.
So I understand that. I guess what I was gonna just follow up and say was, I guess if they had understood that the material coming out wasn't just 100%, you know, muck, which is mostly vegetated, undecomposed plant matter, like if it was more like if he understood 80% sand, could they have used that material in the cooling basin then? Because it's just going to be like a park. They wasn't going to put any structures or anything on it.
Well, there's a timing issue.
No.
They had to.
No, I'm gonna,
Go ahead.
so the soil analysis that was done was provided to Bruce. And he took one look at it and he said, this is not suitable material for fill. It's fine sands, it's organics. There's no edges that bind any of the, when you compact materials, you don't have anything, everything slumps. So they have no interest in the Warner's Pond.
Well,
sediment.
I don't know why
Or fill.
something is an issue if it's just a hole. You know, if it's just fill it with sand, like what?
Well,
they just
It's
let me be more specific. First of all, it's a matter of timing. This holding basin has been filled already. They've taken because it's going to. So that's out. It's done.
I understand that. I just want to make sure that we don't jump to conclusions that because he didn't accept this material in the past doesn't mean they can't accept it now. I'm not fully sure they understand.
it would have been considered for the holding basin. Because
The
that
holding
was,
the holding basin has been filled with
I
site
understand
soil.
that, Paul. I asked Bruce DeMaximus this question before we went out to bid, because it was something that CPC asked.
Right.
And so that question has been asked and answered. And if people want Bruce DeMaximus to come and, you know, jump on a call and talk about what material he is looking for, I'm not sure if he'd be willing to do that, but
Let me
It is
tell you
not-
a very
it is
important.
not pond sediments, even for the holding basin. They
okay.
need compactable material that does not shift over time.
The overriding factor here is timing. They're going to have to fill this excavated material in the next year or two. We're not going to, you know, unless something happens really quick, we're not going to have this Route 2 area even, I don't know, it's not going to be ready. There's a timing disconnect. He's looking for the material now. If you told him this material, even if this material is suitable, he said, okay, can we dig it up now? And I don't think we can. So aside from all the characterization, it's a good idea, but I think this disconnect with timing. Having said that, maybe they'll wait for it. I don't know. It's worthwhile contacting him on this. I wouldn't rule it out. Not the dredge pond, but the Route 2 excavate. I would approach him on that to see whether he's willing to even talk about it. He's going to ask you about timing. You can say, okay, well, when would this dredging occur? And can we tell him? I mean, this is just a proposal now. So I don't know, Delia. Timing is an issue here for him.
I would like to discuss with him too, whether or not using any of the pond material, because it's 80% sand with rounded edges, if that could actually be used in a hole. I would like to discuss that with him if we can.
Okay, just Keith, it's not a hole. They're digging up acres of soil, 10 feet down, and they have to replace that soil with solid material. They can't put wet material. It's going to have to be dewatered. So it's not a hole. That's done. It's big areas of 10 feet of soil, big rectangles of excavated material that they have to replace.
Yeah.
What are they doing with that land, do you know?
What are they doing with what?
What are they doing with that land that they're filling in? They're gonna build on it?
That's what my task force is doing. The select board has to decide what to do with the site first.
Okay.
And at the League of Women Voters meeting, you'll hear all about it, Chris, with yours.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, you'll hear all about it.
Does it make sense to the group to reach out to Bruce DeMaximus to see if he would be willing to come and speak to us and answer some questions?
I can reach out to him quite easily.
I think that would be worth asking.
I do too.
And would it be this group or the larger group?
I think us for now.
Probably this group.
I think this
Okay.
group.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
But that, I mean, I would assume that soil could find a home. There's a question of whether it has to be trucked somewhere, right? So
Which soil?
the excavate material from, I'll call it the Route 2, the borrow pit that we're going to dig. That's what we're talking about here.
I think
We
definitely.
would find a home for it.
Yeah.
What's that, Jeff?
I said, we'll find a home for it if nobody else wants it.
Okay.
So whether it goes to NMI or whether it goes somewhere else. So for purposes tonight, we can assume that we have a, can I call it borrow pit? That's kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah, you just have to realize that not all of it can go because you'll still have to mix some of it with the dredge material to stabilize that. There's actually there is a company, I think they're in Bellingham, United Retech. They've come up with a process where they add this specialized concrete to dredge material, which stabilizes it.
It strikes me all this is affecting the volume calculation that EA came up with.
Yeah.
Because they had 49,500, but now we have 6 inches of topsoil. We have to mix it with dredge material, so it's somewhat less than 49,500,
Right.
whatever that is.
And I think that's a good, it's a good point. I mean, I think there are a lot of considerations. So let me just move to this graphic here that shows what we're talking about.
I think you'd have to do a cut and fill analysis to determine how much subgravel you could excavate and reuse to get to the cubic yardage that you want it to get to.
Right. Right. So what this shows is basically a cut and fill analysis with the assumption that you go down 16 inches and you stay below the grade of Route 2 and the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. It does not, as we talked about, does not consider, so the dark red areas are where you can put a lot of fill, and these areas are where you can put the yellow, the other side of the scale is where you can put little to no fill.
So I do have a question for EA on this, because I'm looking at the LiDAR data, and so the southeast corner of that field is the deepest, so I'm not sure why they're saying you can put more next to Route 2 up the north end. I would think it would be reversed, but the rest of the field looks pretty accurate. I'm getting, if you factor in that extra 16 inches taken out, I'm getting close to 11 feet of soil
Are
depth.
you talking about here?
Yep.
Okay.
And I've been down there. I mean, the rail trail is taller than me in that location, so it's over 6 feet tall.
It might be that the LiDAR data is off there.
Well, I'm looking at the LiDAR data, so I don't know what they used, but I think we need to revisit this.
How do I interpret the dark red? Are those topographic highs? So there's more material that can be removed there? Is that what,
It's the depth. It's the depth that the material would be placed there, based on what they wrote, their summary.
oh, I thought it was how much soil could be removed.
No,
No, it's the depth.
Added, yeah, what could be added to be
right.
not
Okay.
not go above Route 2 or the rail trail elevations. Well, actually, I'm not sure if that actually totally shows that here. Oh, because there's another map that seems to show that.
So the second map just basically shows, so there's a negative elevation, these are depths, they're not actually elevations. So this is between negative 1 foot and 1.61. And if you assume 16 inches on average removal, which is about 1.3 feet. It'd be nice if there was one more gradation in here, because what this graphic shows is that you can't put any fill here or any fill here, because they're already, even with that 16-inch removal, they're already above the elevation of Route 2. So that's something else we could ask them to clarify.
So Delia, I'm sorry, this is assuming 16-inch removal and then replacing? Is
It
that what?
is not, no, we did not ask them to look at that.
Oh, so this issue of topsoil, there would
It's
actually
going
be,
to reduce the volume, and that's something else that,
why wouldn't it, well, it doesn't change the volume if,
it's gonna be, it's
I'm a little
going to reduce
confused.
the volume of dredge that could be placed
But
here.
the process here would be you take this area, remove the topsoil, and then you fill the dredge soil and you dredge material, then you put some of the topsoil back, right? So you're actually, when you remove the topsoil, you're deepening this area.
Right,
Mhm.
so,
And then,
so
but then,
what this graphic shows is it's using LiDAR, so it's, you know, an estimate. Um, and it assumes that 16 inches of topsoil is removed and placed elsewhere.
okay,
So that's your baseline that you're starting with.
got it. Okay.
And then with that, then these are the volumes that could be filled. And that's how they arrived at
Yeah.
that 44,000, you know,
Okay,
plus line.
that's what I was asking. Did they start by removing 16 inches? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, Delia, so we can ask them to just confirm the depths there,
Yeah, I think we
maybe-
should.
the starting elevations maybe without the depths, so we can just see the baseline. Like if there's a
Um,
contour map, maybe. That shouldn't be difficult to create.
Does somebody know the area of this area offhand?
between 7.5 and 10 acres, I would say.
Just trying to figure out if you add a half a foot to that, how does that reduce the 49,500?
Hmm.
I think we have to ask that question.
But they're only dealing with topsoil removal. So like I said, if we remove the gravel base below the topsoil, that can counter the 6 inches of topsoil that has to go back.
Hmm.
Yep. Would
So
that be usable to you? Jeff, as
The
DOC?
gravel, yeah,
Okay.
we could use it somewhere. If
Okay,
nobody
so-
else wants.
Well, so that, I guess that's a moot point then, right? For us to be asking them to recalculate
yeah.
based on that.
So
Is that right?
so should we assume for purposes of this meeting that 49,500 is a reasonable estimate about how much this could accommodate? Jeff is saying we could counteract the need for topsoil by taking gravel. So let's assume 49,500 is a good starting point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they have a big caveat in here about what that means, right? So, none of this, so this is just volume.
Yeah.
It doesn't account for any staging, any, you know, access for construction, any erosion controls, dewatering. You know, if you have geotubes surrounding this whole thing, all of those things are going to take up space that will not be available for that volume.
Well, without a detailed plan, I don't know if we can generate anything more accurate. Um, I think for this, we're just trying to get a ballpark cost estimate.
Yeah,
So I think personally, we should probably just go with this. I don't know, there's a lot of detail there. We just caveat it that this needs to be refined.
yeah, I agree. Let me ask Keith, so I'm I'm not a dredging expert. When the initial feasibility study of whatever 32,000 and then the subsequent one of 14,000 cubic yards, is that dewatered sludge or is that sludge as it's removed has to be dewatered? What does it include the volume of water? What is that number that they can say should be dredged?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I think it's the volume that's left after the water is dewatered out. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
So, but you have to think about, you know, when you're doing a hydraulic dredge, you're looking at 90% water. So the volume that you know, you can't do it all at once, and you need means and methods to control the water. I'm not sure that I don't think this is something that we could put out to get a cost estimate on. It's far too conceptual.
Let me give, I'm just trying to understand the volume in my head. So when we, you know, we have to go a minimum of 8 feet and maybe below. So you're removing bottom sediment. Let's say you're removing 6 feet of bottom sediment and that volume. That's 6 feet of wet sediment, which has 90% water.
As it's dredged, yeah.
Okay.
There's like a suction vacuum going on, so it just sucks a lot of water with the solids. But once the water is, you know, flows out of it with gravity, you're left with the same sediment volume.
Got it. I just want to make sure we're talking apples and apples when we talk about the amount of dredge versus the amount we can dispose, that we're not confusing volumes here. Yeah.
Right. No, the sediment is what is being dredged
Yeah.
and what would ultimately fill that
Okay.
field.
So I guess one of the reasons we wanted to get this volume calculation is so we could get a cost. So I'm just wondering, like, what can we do to get a cost then from someone?
Right. So good question. The next step would be to ask the task force if we can reach out to probably do the same sort of thing that we did with the dam removal, cost estimating. Actually, no, we need a step before that. We have to get a plan developed that gets to at least a, you know, conceptual plan like we have for the dam removal.
30%.
Yep, I think at least to see what we can accomplish here. So to have somebody prepare that plan and then get bids from contractors on that. And so I did a little aside, you know, the dam removal group had asked for that, and we do have, just today, we just received a cost estimate for the dam removal cost estimating, so we'll have those. We'll talk about that on Thursday, but yeah, I think it would be the same process.
Who prepares that conceptual plan? Is that EA does that for us?
Yeah, I think we would do that under part of their contract. I think it would be, you know, requesting a change order that would have to be approved. But I think that makes the most sense given the work that they've done, but I have to talk to, you know, finance about that.
I have just a quick question about the test pits. So are there photos of those test pits?
So I can't get them off my phone. I have an old phone and I got some off. And yeah, so I'll find those as we're talking.
Would you be able to share those with us when you get them
Sure.
all compiled?
I'm not sure that I can, to be honest. I've been trying. Uh, so let me see. I have them on my phone. They won't come off my phone. I'll show you what I've got so far. So this was the first test pit. And Jeff provided these descriptions, which, you know, corresponded with my field notes. See, it's nice, you know, really nice topsoil. Some ledge, some stony areas. And that's all I've been able to pull off my phone is 3 photographs. I have an old phone, as I said, and it's just not
Hmm.
cooperating.
Yeah, I mean, we can learn a lot from the soil color and the test pits. If there's a way to get those photos off, I think that would be really good to look at.
What are you trying to understand?
There's areas where there's likely shallow groundwater. I think I just personally want to understand where that might be an issue with trying to dewater.
We did not hit any areas of shallow groundwater. Those would be on the other side of the Bruce Reefin, I think. Everything that we hit was good upland soil.
So where, in general, where those like down the middle of the field kind of just look like maybe 10 or so? Is that what you did?
So, um, share a map here that I can certainly send. This, Jeff also prepared this. This is awesome. Can you see this? It's probably not great. So these are all the test bits, and there is a low area in here. The test bits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. There's a little bit of a low area in here, and this was the closest test pit. That was also a high and dry test pit. We don't have it. Oh. Okay. See if I can show these. That was probably the first. So this is very interesting because they're not coming off my phone into anything. I think this was one that showed some iron content. This was either 9 or 10. Yeah, I'm happy to share these photographs. they appear to be somewhere. They're not, they're not coming off my phone, but they're somehow here.
Okay. We get a copy of the test pit map too?
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
Are we done with this agenda topic for the moment?
What about the monitor wells? Do we want to talk about that? There were 2 monitor wells that came up.
Yeah, Jeff, is there data available from those monitoring wells that we could potentially get look at?
I would think Mass DOT would have that information, but the contacts I was dealing with are no longer there, so I don't know who to reach out to.
Okay. Um, I can then just do a blind shot in Mass DOT and ask, if no one has a contact. Is that acceptable?
yeah, I'm trying to think of who might have that data and I can't think of anybody off the top of my head.
Okay.
Okay, well, if there's no one has a contact, I'll just wait a couple days, but I'll plan to reach out to Mass DOT unless I hear otherwise.
Okay. So are we at the stage now where we map out a proposal or proposals based on dredging quantities?
Would that proposal include like where to dredge? Because I've been, if we can actually do 49,500, that's 41% more than the 35. What?
Well, we could, I'm sorry, we could. We
Well,
could do
Yeah, I mean, let's say,
almost any amount we want, depending on how we consider this.
well, but if we can put 49,500 in this disposal area, right? That's an assumption right now. That's 41% more than the 35,000 than we had before. Does that mean that there's that much greater area that we could? I'm just, I was looking at the. Can I share my screen for a second?
Yeah,
And this is really, crazy thinking, but this is this is the 35,000 cubic yards, right?
Right.
I'm just saying conceptually, what would we do with that extra 41,000? Yeah, excuse me, that extra 41%, if it were that much, even if it was 30%, if that translates to 30% more area, would the proposal be to kind of connect these 2 areas? Would the proposal be to, connect, have it sort of from the mouth of Neshoba Brook so you could actually navigate, this whole area? Just thinking, because to me, this original plan was the 2 distinct areas, they weren't connected. Maybe if we could dredge more, we would connect some of these areas. That was just what I was thinking, very conceptually. I mean, we don't have to discuss that right now, but I'm just thinking, what do we do with that extra material in any plan?
Doesn't it make sense to think about that as what is the areas where there are the highest growth of the invasives, instead of just looking at, are these areas
Yeah.
that you just pointed out, Paul, like high growth areas for the invasives?
Well, Delia, you know more than I am. I just took a look. I was standing at Dro looking at this area. It's
Yeah.
all over right now. It's this
It's
area.
terrible. Yeah.
It's terrible. And there's a little bit of a path that looks like some canoe
you
went
can
through here.
see, you can see the stream channel.
You can see the stream channel, right, running right along
Yeah.
here. But this is you know, to open up these, and you can't see much of a stream channel from the brook. This is all clogged up right here. So it's a good question, but right now, I mean, this is an open area, right? But other than that, there's a lot of vegetation here. So it's almost like, where do you want to open it up?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we have to
Yeah,
look
I
at the
think
depths a little bit, so, but yeah, I think at the very least, what your concept there makes sense, you know, just try to connect those areas, and then you have the deep hole there, so. But, I mean, that's something we can look at a little more in depthly now, is just look at the bathymetry maps that were collected, and there's some estimates for what the depths are. And we know what our target depth should be, so we could try
Yeah.
to estimate areas.
And the reason why I did this, I conceptually, okay, if we stay with dredging, we have the dam, how do we improve the small boat recreational attributes? And, you know, can we connect Neshoba Brook? Yeah, can we make a connection here so this whole area becomes navigable? Because right now it probably wouldn't be. You'd have this area and you'd have this area, and they would be connected. So I'm just thinking how to connect these up, if that's possible.
Right.
So I'll just
I
gonna
mean, I
leave
think
it at
some
that.
of it will be once these areas are dredged, that there's movement of the, you know, newly formed or reformed stream channel that would, you know, reconnect those areas that are not currently connected.
So when I was up at Giroux looking out here the other day, and I saw this little channel, that's the stream channel. That's the water moving through this area. I thought it looked like almost a small boat. Somebody made a pathway. You're saying that was the stream channel through here. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
I
Interesting.
think that's the movement of the highest velocity
Yeah,
of
that makes
water.
sense.
Yeah,
I didn't see anything here. I mean, it was just
No.
clogged, but I did see it here.
yeah.
Okay, I'll unshare, but I just want to run that idea by you just conceptually.
I mean, I think I would hesitate. I don't know that I have the, you know, understanding of the best places to dredge. So it might be something that we recommend that the dredge areas be reevaluated.
Yeah, I think that's a secondary analysis. Like, I think we really just want to get a cost estimate, because that's really what's driving everything at this point. And then those details can be figured out later to optimize the dredge plan.
Mhm.
Well, in taking a page from the dam removal people, when they put together their proposal, they well, yeah, dam removal, but what were the recreational improvements? They did a pretty good job kind of putting it all together with trails
Yeah,
and boat launches. So I think, you know, when we put together the proposal, Keith, I think we probably should have some idea of on the recreational side what this extra bit of dredging might get us.
Well, we can
Or-
assume that we'll probably be able to link those two areas, like you just said,
Yeah,
and then I don't think we'll need to worry about an accurate volume calculation right now, but we just say that's the goal.
right, right. Because I mean, these proposals are kind of conceptual. So as long as we know that's feasible, because we can dredge more than 35,000, you know, you could even borrow some of the area from the south dredge area. I mean, Delia, to your point, why were those areas selected in the first place? They were selected to make boating more widespread from the Commonwealth Avenue launch, right?
right.
And, to make sure that off the Giroux there was a deeper area. So we have some room to kind of subjectively decide conceptually where to put those things. But
Mhm.
Keith's right. We
Yeah,
won't know.
or to,
Yeah.
you know, just reevaluate
Yeah.
from a new perspective.
So our proposal is going to be to dredge 49,500 cubic yards potentially.
So I don't want to be hung up on that number, because I think that the fields as it is can accommodate that amount. But I think what we have to ask ourselves is, you know, I think this is gonna get complicated.
Yeah.
So we have dredge plans to dredge, 35,000 yards, and
Mhm.
5,000 yards of that will stay in the pond. So let's assume that, 30 to 31,000 yards would be moved somewhere else. We have Dan Stapleton, who has raised a concern about the elevations that were used in the dredge bid documents. And it was a good comment, and EA has responded that, they developed the dredge bid plans off those elevations. And, I mean, you don't necessarily use a surveyed plan that's stamped by a land surveyor to do these kinds of projects, because a lot of this it's relative in terms of depths and not tied to elevations like it would be if you were, working above ground. And that was all going to be re-verified before any dredging occurred. That was part of the dredge bid contract. But now that we have this question and this known uncertainty about the elevation, I feel comfortable saying we should rebid, or not rebid, but ask for a new estimate based off elevations that we know are not correct. So the question for me is, do we now request a new, a survey, like a registered land surveyor survey that's stamped, like what EA did for the area where they have the designs for the 30% dam removal, right? So those are now moving into like a preliminary design, and they have that land surveyor survey stamped, but it's just for the section by the dam. If we're now looking at reevaluating dredging, I think we have two options. We can look to have the entire pond bathymetry surveyed. I don't think it's a big effort. I think it's a couple of days of somebody on a boat, doing soundings, and then having a PLS, a professional land surveyor, stamp that plan. But I think that we need to go through that effort, or I think we could just say we want to go forward with just a cost estimate on what would it cost to place the sediments in that location. And I don't think the second option is a complete picture, but I want to put those ideas forward. And I know that's kind of complicated and confusing, so we probably need to talk it through a little bit.
Well, if it only takes, I mean, how soon could somebody do that? Number one, go out and remeasure. You said it would probably take, what, a couple of days? But I mean, the question would be, how soon could they do that? And what would that cost to do that? And
well, and it's, it's like everything else with the town, it's going through procurement. And so that's, I would say it's a month before we get that information.
Mhm.
I don't think it's a big cost. It would be under 5,000. I would imagine, I'm guessing.
Mhm. And what would we gain from that?
we would gain the certainty of knowing the actual bathymetry and water surface elevations of the pond. So ESS had, they did bathymetry maps and EA did bathymetry maps, and they are similar in many areas, but they differ in a few. And EA, as part of this 30% dam removal design process, because it's now moving into a design phase, they hired, or they subbed out the the hydrographic survey. So the survey of the bottom elevation of the pond in relation to the dam. They had that done by a PLS who has a stamp. They're a registered professional in surveying. And I think you need to have that. Well, I don't know if you need to have that, but that's the difference. You don't generally have that, for projects. It's not unusual for us to be moving forward with a dredging project without that, because the elevations, I'm sorry, I'm not explaining this very well.
Hey, Delia, I have a question. When you put out the bid for the dredge that came in at 9 million,
Yeah,
was part of that bid to do survey to kind of confirm everything?
yeah,
I'm really, given the change here in the disposal area, and um, I don't know if it's to get a. I'd like to see that almost out for bid again with it. I mean, and the largest cost of that was the disposal part, right? What would the 35,000 bid be if we knew that disposal area was the
yeah.
the prison borrow pit?
The problem is we cannot put it out to bid again.
Because
Because we don't have, so we don't think it's 9 million. I think we all agree that was a high bid,
right.
but we have, at this point, slightly less than 3 million. And I think if we were to put that out to bid, knowing that it is going to cost more than $3 million, it puts the town in a difficult position of bidding something that they don't intend to award. And if that's solely to obtain, survey of the ponds, then we would definitely just get the survey of the ponds.
I think you'd have the Inspector General knocking on your door if you did that.
Yeah, but I mean, if we knew right now that, look, I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head. If we knew right now that a rebid of 35,000 cubic yard removal would be in our budget, would we do that?
If we thought that we could get the job, if we wanted to move forward, but the other thing is that we don't have the task force.
Right, right.
That's not the directive yet of the task force.
Correct, yeah.
And we could certainly bring this to the task force and ask the question, but I think given the fact that we anticipate that the cost is going to be so much higher than, $3 million, I think that's
yeah.
What are we anticipating the cost to be, do you think?
Well, I have no idea. It's between 3 and 9. It's not 3 and it's not 9.
It seems we had two major pivot points here. One was, where can we dispose the material and how much would that take? We kind of have a rough answer for that. The other part is the cost. We have to, to Keith's point, we have to get something in the hands of some contractor and so is that the the idea of putting together a plan to do that. It
Right,
seems like,
so how do we want to accomplish that? Do we want to have, do we want to just get the cost for disposal separate, so a separate cost that we can compare to the cost of the restricted cost of sediment disposal in the original bid? Or do we want to have a full analysis that takes into account 2024 numbers and that we hopefully get more bids that responds to a full, analysis? And it would be, and that's the one that I think we need the survey for, because I just don't feel comfortable. I personally don't feel comfortable with numbers or with a survey that we know now is
Yeah.
not a correct survey, even though it would be corrected during the, process of the, dredging project itself.
yeah,
Since that information has been raised to us, I don't think it is, it's not a good look for us to be working off data that's not accurate. So we should have that, we just do that up front and get that corrected.
Yeah, I think for certain projects, you could do like a stamp survey during the more detailed design, but if we're like in a preliminary stage, you could also opt to do the survey, accurate survey then. I think in this case, it does make sense. I mean, there's a lot of questions we're looking to answer that probably would hinge on that, which isn't always the case, but in this case, I think it does make sense at this point. Because we need to come up with like a modified dredge plan.
Right.
Based on depths, and that's really specific. So that's something we would normally just have an engineering firm do for us. But through this task force, if we're going to attempt to do that ourselves, I think we need to have those numbers and probably some guidance for the EA for their CAD access and stuff like that. Do these calculations for us.
and who provides a cost estimate? Does EA do the estimation, or do contractors give us estimates?
Well, I mean, what I did for the dam removal cost estimate was I put out a request for information. So it's not an RFQ, it's not an RFP, and it
Yeah.
very clearly states that it is not awarding any, construction work. And so I put that out to 3 bidders, and I only got one bid back for the dam removal cost estimate from Sumco. From a contractor. So I'm sorry, these all went out to contractors.
So would that be the route here to
Yeah,
put an RFI?
right.
But EA would put together the specs for the RFI. Is that what you're saying?
It would not be that formal.
Okay.
What I would anticipate EA would prepare is a plan similar to what we have for the 30% dam removal, and maybe not even that formal. Every stage of design is a cost.
Mhm.
So we already had paid for them to do that last year, and they just submitted it this year. But I think we need at least, something, 20 to 30% design plans for somebody to be able to provide a reasonable, cost estimate. And they have, Jeff, as you pointed out, they have like design escalators that get added on to that. So it's understanding that it's just a very early stage of the design. But it's enough, nobody can look at the plan that EA has prepared right now and say with any certainty what it would cost to do what we're asking. So we have to have a little bit,
Yeah.
we have to have more refined information that they can you know, takeoffs on to provide a cost estimate.
Yeah, I think like doing a comparison of like 35,000 cubic yards and maybe up close to 50, like doing some kind of analysis comparisons would be really a good first step. I don't think we're gonna be able to actually get all that material, 85,000 cubic yards removed from that Route 2 field, bring it to StarMet. I mean, that's gonna be expensive. I mean, it's doable, but I mean, that's a pretty big effort to move all that, make space for dredging material in that field. So we could probably assume some of it can go over there, but I think the more, if you're gonna try to get that full amount, that's, I think that'll blow this project out of the water for a cost.
Do
I
you
don't-
mean in terms of trucking costs?
Yeah, transportation, double
Yeah.
handling, yeah.
I don't think you should do any estimate based on a transfer over to NMI, StarMet. I just think,
Yeah.
So,
I think the timing is off.
Paul, will you reach out to,
Yeah. I will reach out to Bruce and see if he'll talk with us, but let's have a
and
conversation.
also ask him, is it realistic if we are, going to end up with a, potential proposal in 6 months, is that within their time frame or not? Or what is their time frame?
I think by the end of next year, they're gonna have to fill everything up. Early 2026. I think so now, so I think we have 18 months worth of window here that, if Bruce said, hey, if you can deliver in 18 months and this is the perfect stuff, I think he would jump up and down. But, I think,
So, yeah, let's see if he'll come to our next meeting.
okay. And when is that?
I don't think we've said that.
We
Yeah, I
haven't
don't-
done that yet?
We don't have one yet.
Okay.
We can do that right now if you want. Kind of jumping around, but
Well, maybe we should so that we can get an invitation out to them.
so we do have a quick meeting within the Thursday's meeting, but I don't think that's the right time.
I don't either. We need to meet sometime next week then, right?
I'm away for work, my job basically Wednesday through Friday, so I can only do Monday, Tuesday next
About
week.
Tuesday.
The first works for me. a good
I have
Tuesday.
NRC that night.
Yeah, I have my task force meeting that night too. It doesn't
30th?
work. First doesn't work for me. We're talking about October 1st?
Yeah, because that's next Tuesday.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me.
How about Monday, next Monday, the 30th?
Doesn't work for me.
No, do Monday either.
But the following Monday,
The 7th?
Or the following Tuesday.
Yeah, 7th or 8th are good for me.
yeah, same.
Maybe 7th or the 8th.
The 8th is not good. 7th is good for me.
7th is not good for me.
You say it's
Can we
not
do
good for you?
anything during the day?
Oh, I'm
What's-
busy. My days are filled.
Your days are filled.
Yeah, that's why the evening works for those days.
Yeah, I'm not really able to meet during the day.
And our next task force meeting is the 10th. So.
Does it have to be Monday through Friday?
Yes,
Okay.
I do so many night meetings, so yeah.
Um,
All right, let's figure this out because I have to jump onto slide. Okay, so looking back to where are we now? So what about this week? No, we can't do anything this week. We don't have posting time.
We went Friday? No, that's not enough time, is it? We're going out tomorrow. That's Wednesday. Not Tuesday.
So if people wanted to meet Friday,
This, this Friday?
27th works for me. I mean, you're gonna need a few days to get in touch with the engineer.
Yeah,
yeah, what time? You're gonna ask an engineer to meet Friday night?
What's the
Um,
earliest on Friday that people can go?
Well, you can start by asking and see what he says.
How about-
let's find a second date.
how about Friday, October 4th?
I'm out.
Okay,
Um, I won't be around.
The 11th?
11th is good.
That's the day after October.
Yeah, I'm trying to find something before our meeting. But I'm gonna let you guys, I gotta jump, so I'm gonna let you guys figure it out and you tell me and
What about the 9th?
I'll come back in 10 minutes,
okay.
okay? Send me an email, Paul, if this shuts down the meeting, if I jump off. Okay. So, because it says ends the meeting, so maybe I have to make you the host.
Yeah.
I am the
You're a
co-host.
co-host. So just I'll make you host, but when I come back, just make me a co-host. Okay,
Okay,
all right. See you guys shortly.
I'm the host. I feel the power.
Mhm.
What about Wednesday, the 9th?
Okay. Wednesday the 9th. Oh, I can do that.
Yeah, I can do that.
Wednesday the 9th looks good for me too.
Okay, we got it. Wednesday the 9th.
Yeah.
5:30? 5:30?
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 works.
And we'll meet whether Bruce can meet with us or not then, right? Hopefully he can.
Right. Right.
Sorry, I keep muting and unmuting. I've got a cold, the cough.
Okay, we get that out of the way.
Okay. All right.
So what's Chris, the nature of the quote unquote proposal that the task force is looking for? Is this sort of 3 alternative dredging amounts or 2 alternative dredging amounts? Is that sort of the variable, the amounts of dredging, or is there more to it than that?
I'm thinking it's just the dredging amount, really. I mean, we want to dredge, let's talk about different amounts. Or another part of that is, do we have, it's all the details with that. So for instance, like each proposal, are we gonna include, the ComAv access point and or a Giroux access point? Or do we just include that in every single one of them? And yes, we make the dredging quantity the variable.
The other variable is, is dredging location too. Because right now we're sort of locked into these 2 areas for 35,000, right? Is that our 35,000 proposal with everything else, or do we want to rethink the dredging areas? Keith, it's kind of premature to think about, but conceptually, if we're going to propose something, is that one of the variables where we dredge? Is
Yeah,
how
I
much
think
we dredge?
An
Yeah.
important consideration, but I think we all know the benefits of dredging, and so, dredging as much as possible would only increase the benefits. So I think we can just assume we're gonna try to do as much as we can, given the that matches with the cost estimate that we get. I think if we could do a comparison of like 35,000 cubic yards, just do, initial baseline of what the original dredge bid likely would have been. using that Route 2 field, and
Yeah.
then bump it up to like a 50K cubic yards, and just to give us an increase, like how does this change when we start increasing the volumes? I mean, the
Yeah,
cost
and,
per
you know, so,
cubic yard goes down.
so back to this, I don't know the history maybe of, so I know the history of this area, right? Because this is the boat launch area. And I kind of know the history of that. But I don't, you know, I don't know the history of this area. Maybe Chris, you do, whether, and so, you know, in thinking about where to dredge, could we trade this area for something else? I do think in proposing something to the task force, I think what this looks like, how do we spend our 35,000 cubic yards or 50,000 cubic yards is part of the proposal. So I think we're not going to decide that tonight, but we need to think about that.
Okay. And the
What-
other thing is there any,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, Keith.
I was just gonna say, Paul, I think the way you came about just increasing that by, X percentage and circling an area that kind of links the two, I think that's a pretty solid estimate, given, what we know at this point, and for the task force, honestly.
Yeah, it's as solid as dredge material, right?
Yeah.
So, that 35,000 cubic yard initial dredge plan kept 5,000 in the pond. Is that something that we want to consider or not, or do we
Yeah,
want more or less?
I think so, because then you could theoretically dredge, say 55,000 cubic yards and keep 5 in the pond and put the 50K up in the field.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we want to lose that.
It's already permitted. I mean, yeah, I definitely
Exactly.
want to use it.
Yeah. Okay. And what about the prison farmland? Is that an option to take some dredge material? Jeff?
Well, that's what that acreage that is prison farmland.
But any other prison farmland, like up behind the farm or anything like that, or is that?
It's so restrictive for access.
Yeah,
Protected didn't want to deal with it. So I would say avoid that.
Okay.
Maybe get a little extra over to StarMet potentially. That might be the better plan, but there's a question mark there right now.
Right. All
Both
right.
all trucking, so it's going to be similar.
Right,
probably.
less is best. Mhm.
Free to dump the material as opposed to bring it to an actual dump where there's a tipping fee. So it's just the transportation and labor costs to
Mhm.
fill up those dump trucks.
Okay. All right. So, and do we need to include maintenance of the pond in this? Or is that part of the town's responsibility? I mean, how does that fit into it?
And it's a good question. I think you're going to have to, even with the dredging. We haven't gone back to our site visits to look at the other two areas. I don't know where that is on our to-do list, but I'm not sure how successful that was. So it implies to me there's going to be some maintenance that's going to be needed.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not
Definitely.
clear to me what the town's willing and able to do for maintenance in terms of potentially using herbicides again,
Mhm.
which were effective based on that report that was done from the first treatment, like 2012
12,
or 11 or 12, I forget.
2012 report.
But yeah, I mean, we could get some kind of cost estimate based on just acreage treated, but we don't really know yet where, how much is going to be needed for treatment and what are we treating? We don't really know at this point.
Mhm. Mhm. So we're talking really about the invasives there, right?
That's the primary maintenance concern, I think, at this point, that you
Mhm.
can actually manage.
Mhm. Okay. Isn't that something that the so to speak, do nothing group is looking into as well?
Yeah, but that's for like the whole pond area, but after you dredge, a lot of the areas that would be maintained under the no action group won't need to be treated.
Okay.
Too deep to allow the plants we see out there to grow successfully.
Right.
But there
Okay.
definitely will be areas that are still shallow.
Is maintenance limited to hand pulling, or there's mechanical maintenance? Or
Well, hand pulling for water chestnut is a good thing to do, but all the others like milfoil and fanwort, hand pulling just fragments it and actually causes it to spread. And the fragments, if they find a soil sediment underwater, they'll just resprout.
And actually, herbicides the only thing to do because mechanical won't work with milfoil because it shreds it. And then you have exactly what you're talking about, Keith.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we deal with here in Rhode Island. And the hand harvesting, in all honesty, for the chestnuts, I mean, you're talking about a continual for at least 5 to 8 years before you start to see the true reduction of it.
I think the seed bank for a chestnut I read lasts up to 12 years approximately. So
Yeah.
you're gonna stick with it.
We've had huge success with 5 to 8 years. Yeah, it's something you got to do every year and hit the same spots every year. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it does reduce.
And as part of a management plan with herbicides, you would use them more at first, and then you get it to a management level, reduce them out, control it as needed. But someone has to be monitoring that and making those decisions. So that's something.
Right.
It's part of like a maintenance plan. I think the town really needs to have like a dedicated group or person that is keeping an eye on things and making those decisions. So you have the least amount of impact when you decide to do maintenance.
Yeah. Friends groups work really well with that. And there's also grants available through the state. We have a big one through to do Lake Quinsigamond and sort of the ponds up in central Massachusetts as well.
So Chris, to your point, I think the answer is yes. We'd have to include a maintenance plan. I think the area that it would dredge, so we would decrease the amount of maintenance versus the know nothing people, but no action people, but we still have to do it.
Okay. Well, I have another point then too. It's come up twice now, is downgrading the dam from potential to low. And that changes. So this is kind of like just, I don't know if this is part of our proposal, but this is like a cost savings in some respect, because you're going from a 5-year inspection to a 10-year inspection. So that's just a detail I think that would be helpful. That's come up twice now, I've heard.
Yeah, so the town has to submit that request.
So how do we make that happen? Maybe they won't do that until they're convinced that, until we decide on what our plan is. Right? Dam removal, keep the dredging or whatever.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. So that'll keep that in the back of our minds.
I'm not sure why they haven't done that to date, right? Because it's the dam. It's always been considered a low risk dam. Why is it in the category it is? We just let it sit there, I guess.
I think there was probably just some conservative thoughts
Yeah.
at first, and then letting just the community understand the risk and then make that determination. I don't really know, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't either. And then, so we need to include water access. Whether that's, do we keep the same proposal that was in the original plan to redo or to revise, make better the ComAv point?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's in it. The original plan had ComAv and it had Giroux and those 2 points. Maybe the additional piece would be just to make Neshoba Brook more accessible, so that's not clogged up. I don't know what's involved in that other than just more dredging in that area.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of interest in putting some kind of water access on Pond Street also, which is, fairly close to right
I
out and
do
the
too,
pond.
right, right.
And you could potentially just have a fishing pier as well, just a simple dock coming out. It's not a big structure or not gonna block any, water flow or anything.
At that access point right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something people in West Concord have been asking for a long time.
Mhm.
Seems to not make it on the plans.
Right, it's a good point.
No, that makes sense. The only thing I observed there is like, where do you park? You have the water access, but then you have houses right there. So
Well, there's a lot of kids on bikes and apparently the town doesn't want them on the dam, so you gotta give them alternatives. So they get there pretty easily on a bike.
maybe that's more of just a fishing pier rather than a
Yeah.
boat launch.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's in the area to dredge right now, so I mean, it could potentially be a boat launch spot, but um, I think it would probably need to be a floating pier for a boat launch, because when the water goes down, you're gonna have like a 1 to 2 foot drop sometimes, which is
But
gonna.
if you had an improved ComEd and you had a new Giroux, do you really need a third place? I think a fishing pier would be great
I think
down
fishing
there.
pier would be excellent.
It would be because you don't have the parking headache and it's right in the neighborhood
Yeah,
and it's very feasible right there.
yeah, and it gets you out of the shrubs. You don't get your lure stuck, and yeah, it would be very valuable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not a big cost.
Okay, so good, well, should include that then.
Yep.
All right, so it sounds like we have the basis to start our proposal. Now the question becomes, how do we want to do that? Any thoughts? Suggestions?
Well, I think we need the cost, or no, I guess we don't need the costs right now to just do a framework for a proposal, and the cost comes later.
Yeah. I think it's easier to try to put something together and then just revise it. At least we have something to work with instead of starting from scratch.
I think let's put together an outline for proposal first. Because we've talked about those issues. We talked about amount of dredging and dredge disposal and where to dredge and water access and fishing piers and what else. I think those all are part of a proposal. Then we'd probably just have to put that into an outline.
Mhm.
Proposal would be like a couple of slides with maybe some fancy graphics. The dam
Yeah.
removal people had some nice graphics. So we got to beat them.
I'm happy to develop something that's a little cleaner, easier to read and share, so we could do like a digital plan with all these elements accounted for and shown.
Yeah.
I do have some new drone photos of Warren Pond too that I can share.
That'd be great. Okay.
And I think it's looking at like the variables, what we know that's definitive, and then sort of what are the alternatives, because that's where the alternatives come in.
Right.
We know what's solid, we know what's we still need to know or want to know. And sort of it breaks it out into sort of those blocks in that framework. And that gives us sort of the streamline of how to sort of go in the 3 directions we're kind of looking at,
Mhm.
which is with adding sort of, some things, because that's consistent with all of them. No matter which one we would do, we'd want to add the fishing dock. We'd want to, think ComAb. We want, like all of those things are consistent so that we know.
Right.
And then it's really just sort of looking at sort of the stream flow to connect what we know from the original, and then what does it look like if we go further? And ultimately, we'd love to go further. I think that's if you could, dredge the whole thing all the way around and create sort of, a 10-foot buffer all the way around, we wouldn't have the seed bank you have. But reality with $9 million for sort of 35 from that one bid, it's like that kind of throws it up. But we also know what we need. sort of to look at the heights to be able to tell what that's going to be, where it's going to be, and really how much we can come out
Yeah.
with. Like the idea that Keith brought up is like, we're really looking at, if we've got 49, we really have 55 with 5 yards going back in. So it's really kind of thinking about that. And then if it's, I think when we're looking at 35, we're really looking at 40. And then we're looking at 30 or 35. So I think there's your step ups right there. They just sort of sit there.
Delia, we were just talking about sort of how do we put together a proposal to the task force? What are the elements that have to be in there? So that's what we're kicking around here, and probably need an outline for that. All the just to repeat in my own head, you know, there no particular order. It's like, you know, so what do we know? What's our proposal, and what are the uncertainties? But in the proposal would be how much to dredge, where to dredge, water access, other recreational amenities, plus ongoing maintenance, even with dredging. Well, we have to have ongoing maintenance, and of course we have the disposal area in there. So all those we have to kind of put that into an outline for a proposal.
Would it, I'm willing, I can't do it until later this week, but, I'm willing to take a stab at drafting a proposal, that is along, the lines of, whatever it was that was distributed a little while ago, that we could talk about, if that is
Yeah.
helpful to people. And it would be a really skeletal first draft, but for me, I need to see something on paper.
Yep.
And it's gonna be a lot of if then, if what, kinds of scenarios, but I think it might just be helpful for me and maybe for others to have something.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I think we'll all probably want to add to it. So
Yeah.
I think
It will be a really skeletal first draft, so seriously looking for comments, on that. Did you guys land on a date for, next meeting?
October 9th.
Fingers crossed that Delia has a hole in her calendar.
I do, wide
All
open.
right.
Okay, so that's the night before okay, good, that works. So 5:30,
Mhm.
okay. Okay, I'll send out a Zoom.
Okay. And, okay. Well, I do have one last thing, and that's, we talked about site visits. And, we talked about Milford, Acton, and I found online Linfield, Mass. It's called Pillings Pond. And it's 96 acres, a lot bigger than ours, but it's an impounded water body. And it has 2 different streams coming into it. And the report that was created for dredging was created February 2024. And it was prepared by TRC Environmental. And I believe that ESS is a subsidiary of.
They were bought by TRC.
Okay. And what else did I want to say? Oh, theirs is a much bigger plan. I mean, they're looking to dredge like 550,000 cubic yards. And they were talking about an expected cost. And I just pulled some information from the plan. They were looking at like an expected cost of anywhere from $25 to $50 per cubic yard of dredge material. Right now, the location of the dredge material or disposal area, reuse of the sediment would be within the boundaries of the town. They haven't quite determined any of that yet. But I thought that was really interesting. And the other point is that the report that they wrote was pretty similar to the report that, same format, whatever, that was done for the 2012 report. But anyways, they haven't done anything yet, but I thought that was an interesting place because it was impounded, despite the fact it's substantially larger.
if you have that like a link for that or something you could
I
share?
do. Yes, I do. I can share that with everybody.
That's Pillings Pond, right?
Billings Pond in Linfield.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought also we talked about maybe having somebody from Acton or somebody from Milford talk to us about the success of, I mean, the one in Linfield is proposed, but what about the the ponds that have been dredged and what success have been about keeping invasives down?
Right, so one thing that we did talk about at the last meeting was Acton and Milford, and Alyssa Brown had sent us some information after our last meeting, and that information indicates that Ice House Pond was only dredged to a depth of 4 to 5 feet. So I don't think that's going to help us because it's not enough. We know that 8 feet is the minimum that we need to dredge to. So I would like to keep pursuing Milford, and I did reach out to the town, and you know, there's nobody there on town staff that was there during the dredging, you know, that has been there historically. So the town engineer, for example, who's also the representative for the Concom, they've only been there for 2 years. But she did suggest that I reach out to a former select board member who was basically the driver of the project. And I haven't reached out. I wanted to talk to you folks about it tonight. But we could ask him, or the other, you know, we could also reach out to Army Corps, who was the project manager, and talk to them about, you know, if they're interested in coming and speaking to us. And sort of coincidentally, I had reached out to the Army Corps because I'm always sort of asking them, where are we in this process of a, you know, parallel thing that we're asking from Army Corps of Engineers at Warner's Pond for the federal interest determination. And the guy called me back, Byron Rupp, and he said that you know, we're still on the list for that federal interest determination project, but I asked him about Milford Pond because I knew it was an Army Corps project, and he said that somebody in his office had worked on it and might be available for us to reach out to. So we have 2 potential people that could come and speak to us. One is a former select board member who was a champion of the project in the town of Milford, and the other is the project manager at Army Corps, if we want to, you know, look at those.
Yeah, I mean, if that's our best example, I think lots of questions about everywhere from cost to, you know, success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the plans briefly, and I can send those around because I did get the plans from the engineer earlier, actually last week. And I'm sorry I didn't do that because I meant to do that. But they dredged to a depth of 12 feet.
When did they do that?
So the project was done in 2014.
Right. And do we know how it looks now?
So according to Byron Rupp at the Corps, it's terrific. They're very happy with it.
Sounds like we should do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to hear from somebody who's got a very positive experience.
Mhm.
You know, it's a very different pond system, but I think impoundments, just by their very nature, are similar. They're all dealing with the same issues of accumulated sediments and too many.
Right, probably invasives, many invasives and
Yeah.
whatnot, so.
But I think to hear a success story would be really, I mean, everything looks great on paper, but to hear a really good success story, I think is very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I vote yes.
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 I'm not sure there was a real vote, but thumbs up, everybody.
Thumbs
I
up.
think there's consensus.
Consensus, yes.
Okay, so I will reach out.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, covered everything on my list. So I guess my next question then would be, so on our meeting on Thursday night, the whole task force, what would be, what do we want to talk about then? I mean, that's a big ask, Delia, today is Monday to Thursday. Maybe if you don't have anything written up, maybe that's a time that we can put some things to, maybe that's a time we can put things together because we'll be there in person.
Yep.
You know,
I won't have anything. I've got too many.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
Chris, I would just report where we are, just we're in this process
I meant more for our own group to work on.
of our own group. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to just at least put up the, the proposal template and
Yeah.
start throwing ideas at it. I don't think I'll even have a chance to do anything before then. So if we can just do that, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
And I'm going to be joining you on Zoom again. I'm sorry for that.
That's okay. It's okay.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Good.
Good meeting.
I think so too. All right, so then are there any people, any public comments? Is anybody online?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, so I guess then I will officially close the meeting at 7:15 p.m.